Welcome back to another sports podcast, everybody, because it's exactly what the world needs. It's another sports podcast with a sweaty trio. We're glad to be back in the locker room. Today, we got a certified grinder in the MMA media game. This guy has interviewed basically everyone who's thrown a punch inside the octagon, from prospects to the Contender Series, straight up to killers on the UFC roster. If you've watched a fighter interview on YouTube in the last decade, there's a good chance you've seen his face asking the questions. He's the man behind Lynch on Sports, one of the most consistent voices covering the game, and the host of Hockey on Fanatics View. We're fired up to talk NHL, Olympics, and UFC storylines. If you ever wondered what's actually like interviewing dudes who got knocked out 48 hours earlier, this is the pod for you. Welcome to the locker room, James Lynch. I want to start by asking, does Dana White actually hate Canada? Because all of our events since COVID have been buns.
I don't think they actually have been that bad. I was at the Vancouver event last year. That was like a fight night card. They gave us some good fights there. We're not going to get the GSP type fights that we had back in the day. That's not going to happen. They're not going to fill up the Sky Dome like they did back in the day. But that's partially due to there hasn't been any Canadian superstars. We're kind of waiting for one to come through the wings.
Absolutely.
What about using? I noticed in your bio you have Pine Sports AI. Using AI for sports betting do you think that's kind of the future? And what are the regulations around that if you're aware of any?
Yeah. So yeah, I do like social media for them. They're basically like, it's like an app that just think of like Chat GPT but for sports betting. It's mainly just to like grab all the information. So for example, rather than having to go look on FanDuel to find like their odds and then DraftKings or whatever, this kind of gathers all the data for you. So if you want to say, hey, what's the best line right now for the, Leafs and Sens game going on right now, it'll actually pull all the odds from all the books and stuff. So it's kind of like, I think that's where we're headed with everything because people want information as fast as they can. So it's actually kind of cool and very convenient. I got to say, like right now with that app, and I'm not using this as an opportunity to plug their app, but if you go on there and you type in like, what are the best NBA bets for tonight? It'll give you a whole list. Like it's very cool that way that it just gathers information very quickly.
I will say as a betting man, especially with the NBA, you take a guy to score 15 points, you have to scroll for like 2 minutes just to find Wembanyama or whoever, just as an example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's tough. You guys bet, right? You have to go through all the different pages and find stuff. It kind of takes the hard work out. So
yeah, I mean, they make it easy. Well, a little bit easier for you with the search bar, but even then it's like, it's not that helpful.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. No, they all got different, and here in Canada, like we don't even have, like I live in Vancouver, we don't have access to DraftKings or FanDuel or all these other books. We have specific books that we're allowed to use and others that we can't. So it can be a bit frustrating sometimes. Like we don't get DraftKings here, which sucks. But
so let's call it 36 hours after Canada unfortunately lost to the US. How are we feeling about that? US has been knocking on the door for a while. I've said everything I've seen on Twitter, Instagram is just all the Americans talking shit. Give us your 2 cents on what's happened over the course of the last
I don't like that talking shit thing, because here's the thing, like, when we won the Four Nations last year, like I didn't see a lot of Canadians, talking smack to Americans. There's a little bit of bragging, but I feel like there's a lot of like, Canada's weak, we took your game, all that. Like, you don't need to say that. Like, we get it. We lost. It's not cool. I don't feel that bad, guys, honestly. And I know that sounds weird, but like, Canada outplayed them. I mean, if you want to take the game as a whole, who was the better team as far as like, scoring chances and all that? It was Canada. Look, it's going to happen. Sometimes we've all played hockey here, I'm sure. You've been stonewalled by a goalie before. That's what happened in this game. McKinnon had an empty net, couldn't score. McDavid had a breakaway, couldn't score. You have to score. And sometimes you just have games where that happens. And that's why it is just a game of inches. Like, and even in the overtime, like, think about if, because obviously Makar pinched up, like, let's say he gets that puck and it's a 2-on-1, maybe Canada scores. It's so hard at that level to not make mistakes. And when you do, you pay for it. And it's just the Americans getting the better of it. But like, yeah, and here's the other thing why I'm not like super bummed out either, because we're gonna have the World Cup in 2028, and then we got the Olympics obviously coming up in 2030. I think there's more promise for Canada as far as the up and comers. We got Conor, obviously we got Gavin McKenna. I was going to say Conor McGregor, but he obviously doesn't play hockey. It's Gavin McKenna. Like, we've got this Landon DuPont kid. I don't know if you heard about him in the prospect ranks. We've got Matthew Schaefer should have been on this team. Connor Bedard. Like, there's way more, I think, like big names like that for Canada. That's going to be part of the changing of the guard. That the U.S. is obviously has a young team, but I am excited for what Bedard can do if he gets on an international stage and Schaefer and all these other guys. So, it's and listen, at the end of the day, this is how I my way of coping with it. It just makes the rivalry better that they won. If we won again, I mean, what's the, again, we could just sit here and brag and be like, yeah, we're better. But the fact that they won, there's going to be a chip on the shoulder in 2028. And I can't wait for that. It's going to be awesome.
For sure.
So having said that, I mean, what are your thoughts on this Olympics roster construction? They left some guys at home. They didn't take some of the younger talent. Mark Sheffley didn't make this team. What are your thoughts on how Canada's roster was constructed for these Olympics?
I think they're little things, right? Like I don't really think that there was anything like any major differences there. Like I do think they should have taken Schaefer just because there was that like potential of him rising to the occasion, like we saw with Celebrini, right? Like he's young. It's almost like that blinded confidence you have when you're younger, right? Like I always go back a couple seasons ago as a Canucks fan when Arthur Seelovs played in the playoffs when Demko went out and he played lights out. And sometimes you just have that because you're almost too young to realize the moment and you play awesome. So I do wonder if he would have like stepped up as opposed to like no offense, like a Colton Parayko, I don't think played that well this tournament, right? Like, would have he been in the difference? I think a Bedard would have been good there for the simple fact that like he can be a game changer sometimes. I know we didn't see it last season, but this year there have been moments where he's taken over a game. And what was Canada's big problem? They couldn't score.
Yeah.
You need more guys like that. Like, it's great to have your Tom Wilsons and Bennett's and all that. You need some sandpaper in there, but it would have been nice to maybe have a few game changers. But let's be honest, guys, like these are all small things. Like, I think the roster was constructed quite well. I think the strategy was done quite well. I heard people being like, well, should they have split up McKinnon and McDavid? No, you don't. You give him the most firepower possible. And Binnington, he's not the reason that Canada lost. He played
No,
great. I mean, it's actually pretty surprising with how bad of a season. Just if anything that I learned in this tournament, how bad is St. Louis that like Binnington looked that bad and then he goes here and he plays amazing, right? Like that first goal I would have liked back, but I think he made so many big saves yesterday. This isn't on him. This is on the forwards for not scoring. And like I said, sometimes you just face a goalie and you get snake bitten and it happens.
Do you think we're going to see Sidney Crosby on this next Olympic team, or is this his last ride?
I'm going to say never say never. 2030, probably not, but you never know. There's guys like, that can, we've got technology now. Guys are eating better. Like this isn't the old NHL where guys were smoking on the bench. Like Crosby's been an athlete his whole life and he's, you know what I mean? Like he's a guy that I could see like playing a few more years and seeing what happens. I'm going to say, I'm not going to count him out. I think it's probably not likely, but I'm not going to say a definite no.
Out of curiosity, do you like the 3-on-3 overtime rule
No,
to the
hate it,
Olympic goal?
hate it, hate it, hate it. Do five
no.
on five. This whole idea of like, well, we got to end the game. Like, I don't know. And here's the thing. Like, I say this not saying that like if it was 5-on-5, Canada would have won. I don't care about that. I just don't like the fact that like what happened yesterday. Like I said, one play, there's no one back. It's a 2-on-1. It's a goal. It's just for how hard these guys worked to try and get those goals. It kind of like takes away from it a bit, in my opinion. So that was another thing I didn't like. It's like, great, like you're banking on who's going to make the first mistake, and I don't want it decided by that. I'd rather it be something where there's a bit more strategy involved, and yeah, I'm not a fan at all. The 3-on-3.
I don't know if you saw John Cooper's post game, but he's like, I've been involved in I think it was 5 overtimes they played with Columbus, and he's like, the game was, I don't know, 5.5, 6 hours. And any avid hockey fan, even an average hockey fan watching Best on Best, I'm sure would be happy to watch a 6 hour game of Canada US.
100%. And that's just like, how good was this? The crazy thing to me, guys, is like, here in Canada, obviously, it's a big deal for us, but like I was seeing people that like I've never heard talk about hockey before that are like celebrities or people that are like, well known talking about this game. And that to me is the coolest part. Like I've always, growing up have wanted, hockey to be more embraced worldwide. And I think like, just the way it ended so quickly in overtime, I just feel like we were kind of robbed a little bit of that. Like it would have been good to see it go. And I'm with you. Like if I had it my way, you do the playoff format where it just goes on forever. And I don't know logistically how that would work. I don't know if they can't get flights back home because it's going on too long or whatever, but I don't care. I want to watch them go as long as they can. I'm just an old school hockey guy like that.
For sure, for sure.
I think we just scrapped the All-Star game and do a best of seven Canada US through
Big
that
time.
2 week
Yeah,
stretch in
do it.
February.
I totally agree. Yeah. I love the Four Nations last year. So funny story last year when the Four Nations, when the final was on, I was actually in Seattle for the UFC because they had the event there. And so there was like a couple Canadian reporters and we were in this American bar and it was great. Like even when Canada won, like everyone was cool. It was fun. Like it's something that like we don't like, let's be honest. If you look at the NHL right now, there aren't a ton of like heated rivalries, like people don't like each other type thing. There's a few things like obviously Tampa and Florida got their thing. There's obviously, the Leafs when they play certain teams, the Canucks and Oilers don't like each other over here, but we don't like, this is the biggest rivalry in hockey. No questions asked is Canada and the US. We saw that in the Four Nations. Like, let's keep that going. That is the big ticket seller for the for hockey in general, in my opinion.
So we're all Leaf
Sticking,
fans. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I was just gonna say, sticking with the Canucks, what are your thoughts on them? Why are they such a broken team? A few years ago, they had that bubble run, Demko coming up. Now they've got so many long-term bad money contracts, and the future does not look good for the
Well,
Canucks.
how much time do you have? No, it's there's I mean there's a million things. So okay, so I'm gonna go all the way back to they traded the wrong center. It started when they traded Horvat. And listen,
Yeah,
I was one of the many people that was like, I like Miller more, but I didn't know the extent of the issues with him and Pedersen. And I don't think anyone expected Pedersen to fall off a cliff. Like there's all these people that say like, oh, you had this core and then it kind of went to waste. Like maybe this core wouldn't have worked anyways. Like I do wonder that. Like even if Horvat was on the team, this was still a team that was struggling. They didn't figure it out. They went through multiple coaches. They made a lot of bad trades, like that Jim Benning trade with where they got OEL. I mean, that's like a crippling friend. Like I would love Dylan Gunther on the Canucks. That was the pick they traded to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and they got Garland. So that was sort of the beginning of the end. But I think really what it boils down to is just that like sometimes cores don't work. And I think that this core that they had, even if Hughes had stayed, I don't mind. I was at the point with Hughes where it's like I don't mind him getting traded because they need a big shakeup. Like I think if you ask most Canucks fans, they're totally on board for a rebuild. We've tried this over and over again where it's like they're trying to, do this rebuild on the fly and they're trying to get like some prospect that didn't pan out on another team and hope it pans out. They did that with like Sven Barchi when they traded for him like years ago. Like you just can't do that. You got to do a proper rebuild. There's more evidence that a proper rebuild works than it doesn't. Yes, you've got your Buffaloes, and even now Buffalo's starting to turn a corner. But there, you look at Colorado. Like I'll give you they're a great example. They're they're leading right now. They won a couple years ago. Remember when they had Matt Duchene? Like they had a core of guys that wasn't working out, and they said, you know what, we're going to split this up a bit, and that allowed them to be bad. And they got McKinnon, and that really turned things around. You need those high draft picks. If you look at most of the teams that win the cup, it's teams that get those first, overall picks. The Canucks in their history have never had the first overall pick. So a lot of fans are, hoping that, they're going to get McKenna or Steinberg or whoever, right? It doesn't matter. But my long-winded answer to this question is it's just been a series of them like believing in a core that isn't great. I think they overplayed Demko, and that led to a lot of his injuries. It's also just, like I said, like the mix not working and them, making some, moves that didn't work out. And like, people talk about the Miller trade, like, well, I don't think Miller's not having a great year either. Like they actually moved him to wing with the Rangers. They made him captain. That hasn't look where the Rangers are in the standings. So I think it was just a matter of like this core just couldn't get it done, and they need to change course, and they got to stop lying to the fan base and saying we can fix this in 2 years. I'll take 5 years of suffering if it means another decade of this crap.
Shifting gears a little more towards the UFC, I want to ask, which current NHL player do you think would make the best UFC fighter?
Ooh, that's
Purely
great.
off mentality.
Well, actually, it's every now and then you hear about retired players like doing like martial arts and stuff, which is kind of neat. I think right now, I mean, the obvious one would be like a Tom Wilson, right? Like I'm trying to think of some guy who's like tough and mean and can take the shots and stuff. We don't really see any like tough guys anymore. Like there's certainly no like, there's like your Matt Rempe's and like, a few anomalies like that, but you still got guys like Wilson that can do it all. Wilson would probably be my leading one because he's actually pretty athletic too. And I think he would probably be the guy I would put in the octagon as like, having a good chance.
That's an awesome answer. I would take Bunting. I think that little pest would just go crazy on whoever he's fighting.
Absolutely. If he can make the weight, that's
a lot of grappling, just like
Samba
Samba type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm totally down. And what's interesting? Like, there's a lot of NHL players that are UFC fans too, which is cool. Like, I know Jack Eichel's a big fan. He goes to the events every now and then. Nathan McKinnon was actually like doing some training with Brandon Royval, the UFC flyweight. They were doing some stuff together. I was just covering. I worked for this regional promotion called Cage Titans. Patrice Bergeron was there at the event, like just taking it in because one of the guys he trains with was fighting on the card. So there's all these intertwined sort of things with hockey and MMA, which is super cool. And it makes sense because, they're both physical sports.
Absolutely.
Sticking with UFC, in your mindset, what is the state of UFC right now? I mean, a few years ago, it seemed to be one of the top streaming sports. It was great. Everyone stayed up to watch the cards, and now it seems to be watered down. And this is coming from a middle of the pack UFC guy. I'm not an avid fan, and I'm not a noob. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, but that's just kind of my mindset on that.
No, I agree with you. And I cover the sport for a living, and I preach this all the time. They do too many events. Like they take advantage of the fan base. The worst part is that, and I talk about this all the time, is like they'll lose a big fight and they won't replace it. They're just like, oh, well, the fans will pay for it, right? Like, and how about us here in Canada? We still have to pay for the pay-per-views. Like that sucks, right? Like I got to pay $80 for Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. That's going to be a great fight, but like you look at the rest of the card, that's not a pay-per-view worthy card. I don't think it's worth the $80. They just, here's what the UFC's done essentially is they have created a formula now where they will do as many events as they can because they rely on people just watching it every week. Because if the ratings were bad, they wouldn't do as many events. So people are obviously watching it. I think the gambling part of that has come into that too. I think there's a lot of people that watch it just for the gambling aspect of it. So there's that. They don't do a very good job of building up new stars. I think they hope that things pan out, but like you even look at the last big star the UFC's had, it's Conor McGregor. That's a lot of self promotion, right? Like I remember back when George St. Pierre was fighting, they did a good job of promoting him. They put him on big cards and all that. You just don't see them doing that with other fighters. And I think there's a lot of short-term thinking in a lot of cases too, because they do so many events. They a lot of times will have to scramble to put fights together that don't need to be made. Like I always look back at the Islam Makhachev and Alex Volkanovski fight. Their first fight was close. It was a great fight, one of the best fights of all time. Volkanovski almost did it. He almost defeated Islam. And rather than do what a lot of fans wanted, which was have this big build up to the rematch, they put Volkan on short notice against Islam and he got head kicked in the face and he ended up losing. And that to me was like just an example of them just having such short-term thinking when it comes to making fights. Like, and so that's a problem. Like they don't build new stars. They do too many events. And then the Contender Series has been awesome. Don't get me wrong. But it's also become a labor thing where it's like, okay, we're not going to pay this guy, six figures. We're going to cut him and we're going to sign 4 guys on the Contender Series that probably aren't ready to make the UFC, but we can pay them less and we can bring them in and get them on the roster. That's been a big issue too, that didn't exist during the GSP days because they used to do less events. So I feel like back when George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva and those guys were fighting, it meant more to get in the UFC. I think now there's a lot of politics and you see a lot of guys get in the UFC, they're not ready, because they are essentially just bringing guys in that are conveniently, able to take a fight. And I don't like the way they're sort of heading that way.
With all that being said, do you think we're well past the golden age of the UFC? Like kind of what you were talking about, like 10 years ago, we had like prime GSP, prime Anderson Silva, those guys, right now, I mean, this is coming from like an average UFC fan. I see lots of talent, but that's from like a neutral middle of the pack perspective. Do you think like there's a way to build that marketing better? Is it just like getting new fighters, just marketing better? What do you think?
I think, and I've said this before, I think this would help if they did something like this. I've been preaching this for so long. You look at Full Swing, right? The golf reality thing they did on Netflix. Do something like that with the UFC. I interview these fighters all the time. A lot of them have really cool stories. I think if you could get those fighters to connect with the average fan and people knew who was fighting and they'd be able to follow a little bit better, I think that would help promoting the fighters, honestly. Like, I think it would be really cool to follow like Ilya Taporia or Hamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev and go follow them around when they're doing their training and stuff. And I think fans would also have a better appreciation for what the fighters have to put themselves through. That's another issue. The fans now, a lot of them, like the newer post-COVID fans, are idiots. Like they come in and they talk about a fighter, like, look at this whole Tom Aspinall thing. He gets poked in the eye. In any other sport, the guy who fouls you ends up being the guy they hate. No, they hate Aspinall because he couldn't continue. Now you got fans saying he's scared to fight Cyril Gane. He tried to fight John Jones for 2 years, the same John Jones that destroyed Cyril Gane. So I don't get that logic either. It's just we're getting a lot of, it's this whole combination of like the UFC's doing too many events. They're not building stars. You're getting, these fans on here that, the online culture is I think, put a damper on a lot of things too. But I think the talent's good. I just think that like they need to do a better job of like building better cards. Like I did a video on this last year where I took like 4 events and I combined them into one event and like obviously like got rid of a bunch of fighters, like as far as adding them to the card. But like I'm like, if you put all these fights on one card, this is a good card. Like no one's complaining. But again, I think they take advantage of the audience a little bit too much where it's like, well, they're going to watch it anyways, right? And so that's where we get these cards at the Apex, which for you guys don't know, it's like a Costco warehouse basically where like there's a little bit of seating and there's a little cage and it is smaller than like the arenas and there's no crowd and the fighters hate it. They talk about it all the time. It's like, I don't want to fight in the Apex. So those are like things that I think have really hurt the UFC. And I think, listen, what you said here about like I used to watch UFC, I hear that all the time from people. I used to watch when Anderson Silva was fighting or George St. Pierre, and it's because the quality's gone down as far as the events on a regular basis.
I just want to jump in and say, I think what you said about seeing them behind the scenes and seeing what they actually put in is such a great point because when I'm introducing people to UFC, I think the number one thing that I do to get them enticed and excited about a fight is I show them the Conor McGregor side by side when he dropped weight for his 2-time title bout. And like you show how much like what he looks like walking around normal day to day and then skin and bones standing on the stage. And it just kind of shows that parallel. It shows like what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And even just stuff like they did. So they had this show called like Fighting. They did it for like a couple months, but it was cool. Like even for me, like they showed fighters like negotiating contracts. And like, I think Dana felt it was a little bit too invasive, but like, I thought it was cool where you're seeing like the inner workings of the UFC. You're seeing those, like, I remember Murad Dvalishvili came in the cage when Sean O'Malley won his fight and he like tried to like start something with O'Malley and like they showed like the boss being like, dude, I told you not to go in the cage. Like that stuff's really interesting to me. And I think for the average fan, it gives you an idea of like how the UFC's run. I just think, again, the thing with Full Swing that was so successful was that they, like I play golf and, I follow golf a little bit, but like I really got to know like the people behind golf and like I'd see the names on the scoreboard and the highlights and stuff, but to understand their backstory, like there's so many fighters that have these really interesting and cool backstories. And a lot of us love watching like documentaries on Netflix or wherever. And I think if they focus more on that stuff, like my plan was, I say you cut the events down. Like I think you do like one marquee event a month, you do a fight night or two, you do contender series year round, but you don't hand out the contracts every contender series. Like I wouldn't mind to see a good prospect on a contender series like a couple times and then put them in the UFC, right? Like why do we have to sign them right away when they're not ready? And then that third, the week when they don't have an event, put on that reality show. You can do one episode every couple weeks. You get to meet the fighters, you get to learn about them because the Ultimate Fighter, that format's stale because we already see prospects on contender series. You're not going to watch a reality show format from like 2004 that like no one is into anymore, right? It's like, I wonder what they're like, stuck in a house. It's like, we've tried that like a million times already, right? It's not as appealing anymore. Yeah. Like it was because back when the Ultimate Fighter first started, there really wasn't like, that was really the only way you could watch like up and comers. But now like there's so many streaming services now, like UFC Fight Pass, there's Spectation Sports. You can watch these regional shows pretty much every weekend. So it's not like you can't watch, these up and coming prospects. So that allure is kind of gone. And I'll be honest, like it's hard for me to get into the Ultimate Fighter now. I'll kind of just skip to the fights, but I don't care about, someone leaving out empty mayo can in the house. Like it doesn't matter to me,
How does it work with competitor leagues? So for example, like the PGA has Live and Live is slowly starting to die out and guys are coming back to the PGA Tour. That did dampen the PGA for a little while, but how does that work in terms of the mixed martial arts world?
Yeah, so UFC is the premier brand. I mean,
Yeah.
so if we want to use a golf example, PGA Tour is like the UFC, and then they have like other organizations like the PFL, the Professionals Fighters League, which is like, the best way I can put that, I would put that as being like almost, although they're North American based, but it would almost be like the KHL to the NHL a little bit.
Okay.
Like it's like they have a mix of like veterans and then prospects as well. They're not really a competitor to the UFC because like there's maybe like I could count on my hand how many fighters are in PFL that I would like to see in the UFC that I'm dying to see. So there's that, and then obviously you have your international like promotions, like there's like Octagon and KSW and all these other ones that like actually pull in like big numbers internationally, but they just don't cater really to like a North American audience. It would be like the equivalent of like like I guess like a UK hockey league or something, you know what I mean? That like might get good numbers over in the UK, but like here we don't even hear about like UK. And I only bring that up because I saw a clip of Milan Lucic the other day getting into it with one of his teammates. That's how far he's fallen. He's playing on a UK team now. I don't know if you guys saw that at 41.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
yeah. So
Out of curiosity, what's Bellator doing these days? I haven't been following like.
they folded. So PFL
Wow.
bought them and then they just folded the promotion. So they were doing Bellator events for a bit under the PFL banner, and then they just dissolved Bellator and they just absorbed their fighters. So, but not all the fighters made it over. In fact, a lot of them ended up becoming free agents and they're sort of fighting regionally now.
Wow.
I've
Wow.
always been a little bit curious for finances when it comes to UFC. Like if it's a main card, do they win a lot? If it's a title fight, do they get more? What does it look like, for training fees, coach fees?
Yeah, like they do. Some of the like the payouts are there are public knowledge. Some of them aren't. It just depends on the commission and stuff. And then there's obviously sponsorships and all these other things too. I mean, yeah, title holders obviously get paid more. Fighters can get whatever sponsors they want. But one of the things UFC did years ago when Reebok came in, they don't even have Reebok anymore. They're with Denim, but they had like fighters could wear their own sponsors on their like walkout shirts and stuff, so they could make a bit more money. Now they won't even let them do that. They won't even let them wear them like for media day, which is brutal. Like it's so hard for them to get sponsors now. Like they basically have to do like social media posts or like they have to just hope that someone will sponsor them and maybe they're showing it on their social media or whatever. But yeah, it's not a sport you get into to make any money. That's for sure. It's very hard. Like there's still like I know UFC fighters that still have other jobs because like sometimes it's just not like if you're injured or like you need to do certain things like some of them don't have the luxury of having sponsorships, so the pay's all over the place. Like it's really interesting that way where like obviously UFC pays the most out of any promotion, but it really varies on like how much they're making. And I know there's some stuff that the UFC like doesn't like lets the public know about of some like hidden like payments and stuff. But it's hard, man. I think it's the part of the reason I like this so much. It is the hardest sport to get into. Like you think
Yeah.
of all the damage you take. You think of the fact that like, you have a bad hockey game, right? The Leafs play like crap. They lose a game or whatever. I know it's, Toronto, center of the universe. Everyone's upset about something, but you can go and win the next game. It's not a big deal. With UFC, you get knocked out. You got to wait 6 months and you got to deal with all the fans on social media telling you lost them their parlay, like that type of stuff, right?
And then you still have to heal from the concussion or whatever other damage comes
That
with it.
too. Yeah. Like you have the physical damage and then you have all these people who like think you're terrible. It's like, yeah, it's so hard. Like that's why I have so much respect for these athletes. Like you don't get paid like the amount that you're getting in other, big leagues. You're having to, endure all this because it's an individual sport. You're having to endure all this stuff on social media. And yeah, it's like a physically hard sport and it doesn't have like a long lifespan. Like it's, certain fighters can fight for a while, but there's a lot of fighters that they're only fighting for, in the UFC for maybe like 3-4 years and that's it. Or some of them don't even make it to their second contract, right? So it's tough.
I grew up loving the heavyweight division. It was my favorite. Dan Severn was like my guy. And
Yeah.
I saw this tweet and I just want to read it out. And
Yeah.
this will follow a question, but it will be a little long-winded, so bear with me.
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
The tweet goes as follows. How bad the UFC heavyweight division is. 37 active fighters, average age is 32, 0 former champions in the division, only 2 fighters have ever had a pound-for-pound ranking, 21 fighters with less than 5 fights in the UFC, 19 fighters with less than 3 UFC wins, only 5 fighters with no losses in the UFC, 6 with win streaks more than 2, 17 fighters lost their last fight, 11 with 5+ experience in the UFC, and 15 fighters have losing records in the UFC. With all that said, how long until Gable Steveson is a heavyweight champ?
Not long at all. Yeah, I'm with you guys. Like it's really bad. And here's the worst part, guys, is that like they could get better heavyweights. They just don't want to pay them. Again, they've had, Rico Verhoeven, who's he's like a glory kickboxing champion, this amazing fighter, like easy to market and all that. They're not going to pay him what he wants. Like he's going to go make money, like more money elsewhere. So the UFC like won't even pull out the checkbook because people's like the state of heavyweight's terrible. Well, there's some good heavyweights they could sign, but yeah, this just happens sometimes. Like there's certain divisions that just, they go through these periods where they're not as strong, but also it doesn't help when the UFC's like cutting a lot of guys that, sometimes I don't think should be cut. Like they just cut this Jalton Almeida guy. And look, he hasn't been exciting the last couple of fights, but he's a good fighter. And like the issue that I'm having with the UFC is like they're cutting these guys and they're not replacing them. So it's like you just have like if you're a heavyweight that just is on Contender Series and you make it to the UFC, you'll be fighting for the title soon because like there's just nobody in the division. It's crazy. So it's just it's in a really bad state right now, and I think like there just hasn't been any like I think the other issue too is there just hasn't been any like big prospects other than Gable, like you mentioned. Like he will probably be in the UFC this year. I would be shocked if he isn't, just because we haven't had like any sort of interest like that. Like you'd have to go back to like Daniel Cormier, because even Brock Lesnar had notoriety when he was in WWE, but like Cormier, I remember was like a big name back in the day. But and the other thing that I don't think we talk enough about, and this was something I saw today, and this is so true, is that like because of the NIL deals, like the sponsorship deals for college athletes, there's a lot of college athletes that aren't going to the UFC or aren't going from wrestling to there because they can make money now, whereas they couldn't before. And I think that's also hurting the UFC in all divisions, where they're not getting as many like high-end wrestlers. All the wrestlers now are coming from Dagestan and they're taking over the sport. It's crazy.
I think so. Boxing 20, 30, 40 years ago was the pinnacle of combat sport. And now it's kind of become a joke with the Paul brothers and all these celebrities getting in the ring and doing these stupid exhibition matches. Do you ever see a world where UFC becomes that?
Where it overtakes boxing. I don't know. Like, 'cause again, boxing's had such a head start. Like you look at the history, maybe we'll get to a point where that doesn't happen. But let's be clear about something though. Like the Jake Paul stuff, like the Mike Tyson fights, that's kind of separate. That, like back when I was growing up, we had like celebrity boxing. That was a thing. Like there was like, I don't know if you guys remember Tanya Harding. She was some crazy woman who like attacked another figure skater and she became famous because of that. She did a celebrity boxing fight back in the day. It did good numbers. Like people will want to watch like the car crash type stuff, like of where they'll see like your favorite celebrity like get into a fight. So that's always going to be a thing. That's kind of what I think this like Misfits and the Jake Paul stuff, that some of that stuff is. And to be fair, Jake Paul is like, he's actually like now starting to fight like better fighters. So I give him credit. Like he is, and granted, he's got like a bankroll that's unlimited and he can get the best training he needs, but that's aside the point. But like the Andrew Tate boxing, like that's to me, I don't put that in the same categories like regular boxing or like UFC, because that's just kind of like a sideshow thing. And I think I don't mind it. Like it's going to bring in a different audience. It's going to bring your younger audience, and it's going to be for people that just casually watch the sport, and that's fine. But they probably wouldn't be watching the UFC or like a Floyd Mayweather fight anyways, right? Or like a Canelo Alvarez. They're not going to watch that stuff anyhow. So I think there's a place for it, but I think it's also separate, right? Like it's the same way. Like if we wanted, like we got this Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano fight that they just announced it's going to happen on Netflix. Like it's going to do great numbers. I don't. The fight's not going to be very good. They haven't fought, and Gina Carano hasn't fought since 2009. Ronda Rousey hasn't fought since she got knocked out by Amanda Nunes. But people will watch because the smartest thing they did was get it on Netflix. Like everyone has Netflix. You'll watch it. You'll probably just tune in. Like it's funny. Some people were talking about this in our industry about how like would Topuria and Gaethje, draw more numbers than Rousey Carano? No, they won't. Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano will draw more numbers than Ilia Topuria and Justin Gaethje for the simple fact that they were bigger stars in their day than what currently Ilia and Gaethje are now. What's the better fight? Obviously, it's Topuria and Gaethje, but it's like there's always going to be a novelty for combat sports that like involves people that even aren't that skilled, but they're big names, if that makes sense. It's always about the name and the brand, I think, at the end of the day.
I'm not sure if you saw, there's rumblings. I'm not sure if it's fully confirmed yet that Floyd 48 Mayweather is supposed to fight Mike Tyson 59 years old.
I did see that. Yeah, that stuff I won't watch. It's like, what are we doing here? Like Mike Tyson should be enjoying his retirement and not having to compete. And I don't know who's around him. I just think, like they tried to do, I don't know if it ended up happening or no, it didn't end up happening, but they were going to do like Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman box each other. Like I have no interest in that. Even like an Andrew Tate thing, I'm a little bit interested just because, I want to see how he does. And he looked like crap. And like the funniest part about that whole thing is that like people are like, oh, at least it takes balls to get in the ring. It's like this guy called himself a world champion. And he fought like basically an amateur and looked like shit.
He fought
like,
a guy from Long Island.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but the thing is if like Andrew had never had any combat sports experience and went and did that, different story. But he was touting himself as a world champion, and that's a performance you put on. Like, give me a break. So yeah, that's its own thing. But yeah, I don't like the old fights, like or the older fighters. I have no interest in watching. Like, I won't watch Mike Tyson. So.
Quickly, the best thing to come out of that Tyson and Paul fight was the ashless chaps that Mike Tyson.
Yeah,
won.
probably. Yeah, I mean, I didn't need to see that, but yeah, that's fine.
What's the best part to come out of that?
Definitely did not need to see that, but
No, definitely not. His wrinkly old ass.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I like watching UFC fights, but I'd say, as being an average fan, some of my favorite parts is watching like the weigh-ins and the media, just talking shit. Do you have a favorite, let's say, UFC fighter in terms of just media presence, whether it's a guy you've interviewed or a guy you want to interview?
Yeah, and this might be controversial. I think Sean Strickland's hilarious. Like, and he's doing stuff that's like, that's obviously crossing the line. Like I did a video on this and I got some flack for it because I'm like, Strickland is pushing his luck a little bit, but he's pretty funny, like some of the stuff that he says. And I think like, we've had guys like Colby obviously like try and do like, certain one-liners and all that. Conor's still the best at that stuff. Like there will probably never be another Conor McGregor in our lifetime. Like the fact, like what made Conor so different was not only was he a great self-promoter, the guy could fight, like he would get highlight reel finishes. And like he's from Ireland. Like if McGregor was from the US, I don't think he's nearly as big of a star because he's competing with like Brady and LeBron and all these other guys. So you kind of get lost in the shuffle. It's the same way that like John Jones is a big star, but he's not as big of a star for the simple fact that he's like, lumped in together with all the other American athletes. Conor's from Ireland. You got what? Rory McIlroy and Conor McGregor. Like who are the other like notable, I'm serious though. Like who are the other honestly, notable like athlete superstars from there? So that's what makes it a little bit different. But yeah, I'd say for me, like I just think some of the stuff Strickland does is funny. I don't agree with all of it, so morality police don't come after me. But you know what I mean. Like it's some of the stuff he says is pretty funny and it's clever, and I like we need more of that where people are like clever and funny and can kind of spark a debate.
Absolutely. The biggest question, this will kind of follow in. White House card seems like it's coming up. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's June 14th for Trump's birthday, and the main event is supposed to be Pereira versus Gane, if I'm not mistaken. Is that confirmed?
No, I don't think that fight's going to be on the White House card. My understanding is that fight's going to be in Newark for 328.
Okay.
I think White House main event's going to be Topuria and Gaethje. I think that's going to be the fight.
Yeah. I was gonna so knowing that it won't be Pereira, I was gonna follow in with, do you think we could see a John Jones or McGregor return on this card?
I think McGregor more than John Jones, as crazy as that sounds. I've had this theory. I'm sticking with it until it happens, and then I can eat, have egg on my face. I've been saying for 2 years, I've been saying that John Jones would never fight Tom Aspinall. I've been proven right about that. I think for John, and he'll probably never admit this, I think deep down he knows that Aspinall is a good fighter, and I think him beating Aspinall doesn't add enough to his legacy, so the juice is not worth the squeeze. Like with Pereira, there's more cachet, there's more notoriety to fight him. But even then, when was the last time you heard him talk about fighting Pereira? That just hasn't happened. And even Dana's come to the point where he's like, I can't rely on John Jones anymore. So, yeah, I don't think McGregor has been tweeting a lot, and he seems like he's somewhat clean. Because he's been a mess for years, like on social media, like with all the stuff that he's been in, all the trouble. It seems like he's a little bit better. I hope McGregor's on the card because whether you love him or hate him, like he brings eyeballs, and that's just like he is the biggest star in UFC history. Like to have him on there, even at his age and the injuries and everything else, would make that card that much more. But yeah, I don't know. Like I was at UFC 300. That was a really cool event. Like basically, that was where every fight was a main event. It was a great card. Like I think they'll have some good fights, but I don't know if they'll be able to pull off like the all-time like amazing fights that I think some people are expecting because they do too many events and they're not like either that or we're just going to get the worst cards ever and they do stack the deck. So I don't know. We'll see, but I think White House will be a good card. Yeah, it's far like they might put Pereira on there, but my understanding was they were going to put Pereira on 328. So we'll have to see what goes on there.
Staying with Dana White, do you think he gets in his own way in terms of the growth and the marketing of the UFC, and they don't necessarily focus too much on the athletes themselves?
Yes,
Like,
100%. And like again, I did a video on this recently on my channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. I think I haven't plugged it enough, but like Dana does these fight announcements now, like on his own like Instagram live, and they're just kind of like there's not like a lot of enthusiasm behind them. Like I don't know like if he's not going to be enthusiastic about it, get someone who is. And why are they doing it on Instagram Live? Like, get some production value behind this. You're a billion-dollar company, and you're going on your iPhone to like announce these fights. Like, let's get like some cool graphics or like a video package together. Like, that would be. I think that like that's a small thing in my opinion that they could be doing that I think would get people more excited for fights. Because I think a lot of times now it's like Dana going like, okay, main event is Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, BMF title. Holloway's on a 3-fight like that. It's so like not as enthusiastic as it used to be. Like I remember when they announced like, like McGregor Aldo, like back in the day, like that was huge. They did the whole press conference tour. Like you just don't see that anymore. They just don't do that type of stuff.
James, man, you were awesome. Every guest that comes through the locker room, we love to ask what athletes from what sport do you think are the most athletic? For you, we wanted to change it up a little bit though. So today I wanted to ask you through our 3 sports, which are the NFL, NBA, and NHL. I want you to pick one player out of each league that fits the best of these 3 categories to create your ultimate fighter. You have athleticism, frame and build, and personality and marketability. So you get to pick one NBA player to slot to one of those categories, one NFL player to slot to whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so we'll do like if we're gonna make like the ultimate fighter based off those 3 sports. So personality has to be Conor McGregor. Like out of all the sports, there's no one that can. And I trust. I'm not even like a big McGregor fan, but I can acknowledge greatness when I see it. So McGregor's the personality. Athleticism. I mean, I think probably LeBron, right? Like if we're going with like overall athleticism, and then if we want to add in some toughness or something like, just trying to think NFL wise, like. I don't know, like Jackson Smith and Jigba or someone. I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to think of like, I'm just thinking of something recently, like in, football wise, he won a Super Bowl. So we'll go with him. I don't know that's going to be, I know it's kind of a lame pick. I already feel the disappointment when I had that answer. It's fine. It's all good.
JSN Frame is going to be that reach is going to be unstoppable.
Yeah. James, there we go. Thank you. I got to hire as my lawyer and my PR guy, so I'll keep that in mind.
James, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Take this opportunity to tell the people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Well, first off, thank you guys for having me on. I can't even believe we're already done time. Like it went by super quick. So yeah, let me know if you guys want me back on this. Hockey, MMA, you name it, let me know. At Lynch on Sports. That's LYNCH on Sports. That's my YouTube. That's all my social media. Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter. Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. I'm posting content every day. I'm doing interviews almost every day. I have a hockey show on Wednesdays. I still can't believe someone paid me to talk about hockey. I'm super happy about that. That's been going on a couple years. I think this week we're going to have Dave Hall from Canucks Army on to talk about how bad the Canucks are, and then we'll have our therapy session about Team Canada losing, and then just my interviews. Always talking to UFC fighters and all that. And thanks for having me on, guys. This is great.
James, every episode we get a salute and a stay sweaty. Can we get a stay sweaty salute from you to close out the episode?
Stay sweaty.
Stay sweaty.
Thank you so much.
Great enthusiasm.
Thanks, James.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Seriously.
Yeah. Let me know. Like, just slide in my DMs.
100%.
Nothing weird, but just slide in my DMs. It's all good. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Hey, by the way, quickly, are you guys all based in Toronto?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I used to live in Toronto. I lived there for 10 years. My son's actually born in Toronto.